This episode is brought to you by Ridge Wallet. Go to ridge.com/JohnSolo and use code JohnSolo to get 10% off your first purchase. What is going on, Solo fam? My name is John Solo, and the first thing I want to say before we get this episode started is a happy belated Mother's Day to all of the wonderful moms watching, and especially my own mom, Mama Solo. If you haven't listened to many of my AMAs or my Patreon podcast, you may not have heard me talk much about how Mama Solo is almost entirely responsible for nurturing my love for reading, and is therefore the primary reason this series exists. If it weren't for her, I almost definitely wouldn't have picked up Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, or plenty of other incredible books as early as I did, nor would I have learned to embrace my inner dork so masterfully. And it's because of that I want to not only dedicate this episode to my mom, but also talk about a story she read to me almost every night when I was a kid, Love You Forever by Robert Munsch. Now, chances are you've heard of this story because, well, first off, you chose to watch this video, but also it's obscenely popular. If your mom or dad didn't read it to you when you were a kid, then you may have even heard it somewhere else, like when Joey read it for Emma's birthday on Friends.
Love You Forever by Robert Munsch, published by Firefly Books, printed in Mexico.
The story has a very special place in my heart, but you may not have known about the incredibly tragic events that inspired it, or the fact that there's some people out there who actually find the book creepy. Personally, I find those people to be weirdos, but we'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to break down the story a little more in depth so that those who haven't read it, or at the very least haven't in a while, have fresh perspective. As always, make sure you hit that like button to support the channel, subscribe for new breakdowns of famous stories every week, and most importantly, enjoy. So our story opens with a mother holding her new baby and rocking him back and forth while singing a song. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. So sweet and innocent, right? Yeah, not for long. The newborn soon turns into a 2-year-old, and unlike me when I was 2, he doesn't spend all day sitting quietly in a corner listening to Beethoven and playing Sudoku. He trashes the house by pulling books off shelves, pulling food out of the refrigerator, and even flushes his mom's watch down the toilet. He drove her absolutely crazy all day long, but that didn't stop her from singing their favorite lullaby every night. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Well, the growing boy kept on growing until he was 9 years old, and once again, his mom had quite the handful. He would cuss around his grandma, he wouldn't come in for dinner, and he had terrible hygiene. Even still, though, when nighttime came around and the boy fell asleep, his mom would sneak into his room, rock her in his arms, and sing that same lullaby they both loved so much when he was a baby. Soon enough, that 9-year-old had turned into a teenager, and at this point, his mom had gone from wanting to sell him to a zoo to feeling like she was living in a zoo herself. He wore weird clothes, he listened to weird music, and his friends were as strange as can be. Living in his own little world, he completely disregarded his surroundings and would often trash the house without even pretending to care. All that being said, a mother's love knows no bounds, and there were still some nights where, if her son was sound asleep, she would rock him in her arms and sing that special song. Time flies though, and it wasn't long before that rowdy teenager was a full-grown man and had to move out to start a family of his own. Even still, that didn't stop his mom from making special trips to his house where she'd use a ladder to sneak into his bedroom and sing him their song. One day, while the boy, who's now a man, was making dinner, his mom called him to say that he should come visit her soon because she was getting very old and very sick. So he did just that. He drove right over to his mama's house, and when she answered the door, she tried singing their song, but she was too old and sick to finish. And so it was time for the son to take over. He held his mom in his arms and rocked her back and forth while singing the same song she sang for him on his very first night home from the hospital. I'll love you forever. I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. So I guess not the same song, but pretty close. When the man returned to his own home that night, he stood at the top of the stairs for a long time, then went into the bedroom of his brand new baby girl. See where this is going? He scooped up that little angel in his arms and gently rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And as he rocked her, he sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be.
That was amazing.
Aw, you're welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much for that gift.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a gift, but it was my pleasure. Now that we finished the story, though, I'd like to move on and talk about the extremely tragic nature of its inception, as well as how readers have responded to it over the years. So, let's jump into that right now. So So due to the extremely sensitive nature of this explanation, I think the best way for me to break down how Love You Forever was conceived would be to quote the author directly. So here's how Robert Munsch explained it in his own words. I made that up after my wife and I had 2 babies born dead. The song was my song to my dead babies. For a long time I had it in my head and I couldn't even sing it because every time I tried to sing it, I cried. It was very strange having a song in my head that I couldn't sing. For a long time it was just a song, but one day while telling stories at a big theater, it occurred to me that I might be able to make a story about the song. Out popped Love You Forever, pretty much the way it is in the book. But it wasn't as simple as just releasing a book after that, because the publisher he'd been using up to that point didn't think Love You Forever was a children's story, so he had to find a new one who would be willing to take the risk. And what's actually pretty funny about that is, one, I'm sure his original publisher is pretty bitter about the fact that as of 2017, Love You Forever had sold over 30 million copies, but oddly enough, that same publisher was right about the fact that it wouldn't do well with kids, or at least not at first. According to Munch's website, one day the new publisher called him about the book and said, "This is weird. It's selling really well in retirement communities in Arizona, where kids are illegal. This is supposed to be a kid's book. What's going on?" As it turned out, parents weren't just buying the book for their kids, they were buying it for their own parents as well. Those grandparents would then show it to their friends who would buy it for themselves, their own kids, or for their grandbabies. By 2008, 22 years after it was published, Love You Forever was the 4th best-selling children's book ever sold in the US, and parents across the country were singing that iconic song to their little ones. Speaking of, one thing that I love about this book is that everyone has their own version of the song. My mom didn't actually sing it to me, so the way I was reading the story to you is how I heard it when I was young, but as an example, here's Robert Munsch's version.
What is the tune that you hear in your head when you sing that song?
It goes like this. I love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be.
Truly wonderful. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I was surprised to learn during my research that there's people out there who not only dislike this book, but actually despise it and the creepy mom who couldn't let go. And I have to admit that while I'm almost impossible to offend, I got pretty annoyed when reading that because I've known about the story for 20 years now, and never once have I thought the mom was creepy. And this is coming from someone who makes a living by talking about how creepy children's stories are. But I was able to find an article written back in 2008 called Love You Forever, Hate You Forever that talks about the book's divisiveness. In the comment section of that article is a treasure trove of parents who feel unreasonably proud of their decision to not read this book to their kids. I literally detest this book. I hate it. It's so disgusting that it almost makes me sick. Okay. I find the art repulsive and the subject matter grotesque. Under no conditions would I read it to a child. And people keep giving it to me. Actually, my kids, but with the idea that I'll read it to them. Yeah, probably because those people aren't as scared of children's books as you are. A 3rd copy showed up under the Christmas tree this year and was summarily dispatched in pieces into the garbage. I will not tolerate it in my house. Okay, Adam, so what you're saying is you woke up on Christmas, watched your kids unwrap that present and probably be pretty excited about it, or maybe more confused than excited because it's apparently the 3rd copy they've received. Then you proceeded to sneak away, tear their new present into pieces, and throw it in the garbage. What the fuck? I mean, I can admit that the illustrations aren't the cutest that I've ever seen. In fact, I remember that when I'd read the book as a kid, I'd see this picture and wonder why they didn't draw a cuter baby. But they're not so scary I wanted to rip the book into pieces. Maybe you just need to be a little braver? This next comment takes a calmer approach, but still manages to be incredibly insulting to not only Robert Munsch, but all adoptive parents. It's pretty long, so if you want to read the whole thing, you can just pause the video. But she basically said she liked the book until she had her own son and realized she would never raise her child the way the mom does in the book, which is good because it's a storybook. Then she goes on to say, it's obvious it was written by an adoptive parent because adoptive parents are controlling and see their children as property, which is just an incredible overgeneralization that I can't help but be impressed by. Just to clarify what she's saying though, after their 2 babies passed away, Bob and his wife Ann adopted 3 children, but this book was not written for them, and I'm almost positive it was written before they were adopted. As Munch stated earlier, the book was written for his 2 dead babies. And when you read the words of the song with that context in your mind, you get a feel for what Bob had in his heart and mind when writing it. Another comment on that same article from a woman who actually understood the story phrases it perfectly. Bob Munch wrote this book after his first 2 infants were stillborn and he realized that he would never see them grow up. The idea of being able to watch his children grow, the longing to have the ability to be with them at all times was seductive for someone who put 2 infants on the ground. This, to me, makes the book make perfect sense. I don't personally love it, but I read it as a poignant sense of loss and desire to see, touch, and know the children who are now unknowable. So whether you love the story or you hate it, try to put yourself in Munch's shoes next time you read it, to the extent that that's possible. And please, if after that you still don't like the book, if you're still going to insist on putting it under a magnifying glass and judging it as if it were a real story about a mom doing this to her kid, just consider the fact that realistically, there is no way the son would have stayed asleep while his mom crawled through his window and started rocking him, which means that if he did have a problem with it, he definitely would have said something because he's a big boy now. And if he doesn't have a problem with it, then you shouldn't either. At least not to the extent that Adam does. That guy probably has some other deep-seated issues. Was never hugged as a kid, actually got coal on Christmas morning. You know how it goes. Anyway, Solo fam, we've spent a lot of time this episode talking about mom, so now I want to give a little spotlight to the papas around the world. Mother's Day may have been this week, but Father's Day is next month, and I know you haven't gotten your dad a gift yet, so why not surprise him with the wallet he didn't know he needed? The Ridge. So for those unaware, the Ridge is a minimal front pocket wallet that was made so you could ditch your old bulky wallet and streamline what you carry every day. It blocks RFID, keeping you safe from wireless theft. It's slim and comfortable to carry around, and with a lifetime guarantee, is the last wallet you're ever gonna have to buy. If you're anything like me, then your wallet is probably filled with a bunch of junk that you definitely don't need. For example, here's my college ID, even though I graduated 2 years ago, and here's my friend Jake's college ID. I don't know why I have this, but thanks to the Ridge's sleek design with 2 metal plates that are held together by durable elastic bands, you don't forget about the useless shit you've been carrying around for years because you can see everything you're carrying and easily pop out what you don't need. It comes in titanium, carbon fiber, and aluminum, and there's over a dozen designs to pick from, so you can find the one that matches your style best. And sure, they're paying me to say all this, but you don't have to take my word for it. They have over 30,000 5-star reviews and a free 45-day return policy, so if you somehow don't like your wallet, you can just send it back. It's also worth mentioning that this was my wallet beforehand, so if the Ridge is replacing it, you know it's gotta be good. And no, the irony of showing off a bad motherfucker wallet in a video dedicated to Mother's Day is not lost on me. So go to ridge.com/JohnSolo, that's ridge.com/JohnSolo, and use code JohnSolo to get 10% off your purchase. Link in the description. And on that note, I'm gonna bring this episode to a close. I wanna give a special thank you to the Solo fam for watching, the Patreon fam for their continued support of the channel behind the scenes, and one last time, thank you to all of the mothers in our community. We literally wouldn't be here without you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this episode, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to have more content like this delivered to your sub box every week, and share this video with anyone you know who either loves this story or hates it. As always, you can find links to my social media in the description down below. Make sure to follow those to stay updated on what's going on between videos, hints at what topics we're covering next, or just to say hello if you want. Also consider following the baby that I'm going to love forever, Gunther, because he's rather photogenic and wants to strut his stuff for you. Hey, pay attention. Do you want to strut your stuff for these people? How are we supposed to promote your social media if you don't show your cute face? Ever think about that? Yeah, probably not. I'll be seeing you guys next week with another episode of Messed Up Origins. Until that day comes, my name is John Solo, and remember, I'll love you forever, Mom.